You're listening to the Behind the Pipeline podcast, the show that helps your team sell more, faster. It's brought to you by Rick Williams, a leader in B2B sales enablement and go-to network selling. This show features revenue leaders sharing their stories, strategies, and solutions that helps you build repeatable revenue growth. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now to the Behind the Pipeline podcast. Let's go.
Hello, today I'm joined by Dan O'Shaughnessy. He's a fractional go-to-market consultant who specializes in driving growth through creative approaches for pipeline generation and customer retention. Dan, it's great to have you today. Tell me I said your name right.
No, you didn't, but it was close enough. It's O'Shaughnessy. Even after we practiced several times before we started this, you still managed to get it wrong.
Look, everybody who knows me knows I can't speak English anyway, so don't give me a difficult Irish name to say. So my apologies. All right, we've got that right. Listen, sorry for butchering your name. I do apologise. It's a great classic Irish name. So, Dan, thank you for joining me today. What I want to do is just dive into a topic we talked about previously, which is the SaaS market, particularly in the UK, because that's the area you operate in, is particularly tough at the moment. Everyone I speak to, it's hard, even from an international perspective. But I think with potential recession coming, or at least being on a bit of a downturn in the UK, you know, what's your perspective in terms of, you know, what do you think companies need to be thinking about to, you know, create pipeline in a tough market? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, Rick, thanks very much for having me on here, and thanks for butchering my name. But yeah, we'll jump into it. I mean, what's going on at the moment is really interesting. If you look globally, there's been an explosion with the SaaS market. There's over 30,000 vendors now out there, which is, you know, becoming very, very crowded. And like you said, there's a lot of challenges economically inside of local markets, especially here in the UK where I'm based, that's, you know, causing people to be a bit cautious of how they're spending money at the moment. And right. Generally what we're hearing at the moment, or what I'm hearing, is that, you know, close rates are declining. People are struggling to generate pipeline. Reps are getting ghosted through the sales cycle. In a panic, then that's sort of getting AEs to be running to missing qualification and going to demos to show the product because they want to just get in there. We're seeing a lot of pipeline fall out early, and, you know, that's impacting forecast accuracy and ultimately the winning of net new business moving forward. And ironically, I've seen a couple of posts recently as well, is where people have been actually hitting their new business targets, but actually their churn rate's gone up because they've been going outside their ICP to win business. So it's a bit of a mess out there. And, you know, whilst I say that it's a bit of a mess, there are companies that are doing exceptionally well. They've got a great market, they've got a great offering, great value proposition, and they're doing really well about it. I think there's a couple of problems with an explosion in the market of SaaS, and with a job that's, let's put it frankly, is a very low barrier to entry as being sales. There's not enough education and training into those sales individuals on how to go and do the hard graft of finding pipeline, and then how do you then work that pipeline and move it through, develop it, and bring it into a close. So I think there's a big challenge there around enablement of the workforce that's coming through from graduates into BDRs and BDRs into becoming AEs to help them come through a complex market right now. Yeah. I think the other thing is at a high level is people are, you know, the definition of sanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And yet their go-to-market strategy and prospecting is, let's do the same. Let's hire some more BDRs, let's spend some more money in marketing, let's create some more MQLs and actually see if we can change the outcome. And it's like, well, hang on, if it hasn't been working, why hasn't it been working? And what can we do differently? And can we take a different approach to it? Can we still keep what we're doing? Because we don't want to deviate too far away because some of that's working, but can we also try some new things and be a bit more creative along the way? How do we engage with partners? How do we engage with referrals? How do we build out a community? How do we go and build content? How do we encourage our AEs and our BDRs to go and have a level of autonomy to go out and create content or go out and find business themselves without going through these regimented channels? So I think, yeah, it's a very challenging market. I think The enablement and coaching issue is something that needs to be addressed with reps right now. And you've got leaders who are running around trying to solve all the problems and sort sales processes out and do X, Y, and Z inside a business, but also trying to then manage a forecast and coach and enable all of these individuals that work underneath them. And it's starting to break and strain because there's just too much for them to do moving forward. Coupled with prospecting strategies not being as diverse or changing enough, I think that's where we are.
Wow. Okay. We could probably spend 2 hours just unpacking that. So look, there's a lot of good points in there, and I agree with everything you've said. So let's just pick on a couple of things. Look, first line sales manager, I'm not sure I want to be one of those at the moment. That's a tough gig, right? That's a really tough gig. You've got massive pressure from above in terms of, growth and strategy and the rest of it, and execution on hitting targets and numbers. You've got probably a more demanding sales force than you ever had, just by the nature of the generation who's often in there. And that's not belittling Gen Z. It's not. It's just they're a different breed, right? And they have expectations, and rightly so, I believe, around coaching and training and so on. And I hear it all the time from reps. They desperately want to do better. I mean, and that's a great thing, is there's a hunger to learn and want to do better. And one of the biggest complaints I have is we're not getting any training. I'm not allowed to spend any money to invest in training. I've never had a training course since I've been in this company, and I'd like to get coached, but either my manager's not a good coach, and that's another topic, because they could be a great salesperson but not great at coaching, or whenever they get together for a coach period, it just turns into a forecast meeting. And it's because your first level of managers are just running after the revenue, trying to get that number and off you go. So I think it's particularly tough at the moment. And then you have that, it's exacerbated anyway then by market conditions are not easy. It's more competitive, like you said. And I think enablement is a key thing, and I would obviously say that I'm completely biased. That's what I do. I do sales enablement, and you do a lot of this as well. But that is something, and we saw quite a lot of organisations get rid of their sales enablement internally, so they've lost a lot of that, and then a lot of the smaller organisations just can't afford to have a headcount for sales enablement when what they need really is fee earners. They need people who are revenue creators, but there is definitely need for that, no doubt about it. That can transform sales teams in many, many ways. So
You make an interesting point there. One thing that was on my mind, I was thinking about this last night. So I'm a massive Liverpool fan, but live in Cornwall, so I get to watch Plymouth quite a lot for my sins. And what I was thinking about last night, I was driving to a game last night, which we drew, which was painful, as ever it is with our goal. But if you look at Rooney, who's just left there, right? Phenomenal player. Probably one of the English best players we've ever produced. I'm sure there'll be loads of comments around it, what people view on that. But it's one of my views. He's gone into management. He's done it at several clubs and failed, right? So that rising talent, that AE who smashed it, we see lots of those that make that step up to become first line, second line managers and just don't know how to manage and coach because it's a different skill set. Yet you look at Liverpool and you've got Jurgen Klopp, who played like low division in Germany, wasn't a prolific player, wasn't one of icons of Germany. Arne Slot as well, who's just come in. They've not had that background of being, well beaters on the great stage as being talked about as generational greats. Yet they're being talked about generational greats as managers.
Right.
So there is, whilst, I always want people to go forward and we want to promote people, but if you're going to take your top sellers and promote them, you need to help them to understand how they coach because they've just done it themselves. They've been phenomenal. Yeah. They sometimes don't kind of know how to coach others who didn't get it as quickly as them. Mm-hmm. Or look at those that perhaps aren't doing as well as selling, but actually could they become good coaches and good leaders? Because that's actually the attributes that they have. They get it. They just can't do it. And we see that in football managers all the time. And Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard are the same. Have made that step up to become managers and are failing miserably. And I'm a Liverpool fan. Gerrard's a hero to me, but I'll say it right. He's crashed and burned. He did okay at Rangers, but Aston Villa and out in Saudi, he's not doing very well. So it's not always the best performers at a sales level are going to be your best performers at a first line, second line sales leader's role.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point because You see it all the time. You see it all the time. And look, I've been very lucky. I've been coached by some amazing managers who were the best, without doubt in my mind, some of the best sales coaches in the world. And I still have those relationships, and I'm very lucky to have those. I came into sales from pre-sales. I was a solution consultant. I was a bit of a techie, and did that for about 8 years, and I went into sales. So I always felt like I wasn't really a salesperson anyway. And, didn't always looked in awe at all these amazing super salespeople. And, I learned from these people. I think I was a reasonably good salesperson, but I definitely wasn't one of the best out there. But what I think I'm better at is I understand sales, and I can spot how to make someone better. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, you look at some of the best, take tennis, some of the best tennis players in the world still have loads of coaches. It might be a coach just to help them on the backhand or something. I have no idea. But you don't need to teach them how to sell or play tennis, but you can improve what they do. So everybody benefits from coaching. That's something I've learned. I pay for a coach to help me with my business. I invest in coaches. Something I learned quite late on in my life, in my career, the value of having someone who can help you. And yeah, I may not be or have been the best salesperson. I was good, but probably not the best. But what I can do is coach and spot in another person how to, approach things differently, tweak things or whatever. And I think it's just a different skill. And
100%.
We do expect our first line managers to be coaches, and we usually give them zero training in that. We invest in training in the sales reps, but very rarely give first line level manager training to help them how to coach better. I don't even know an organization that I've been involved in where I even saw that. I've been in an organization where they've given you leadership training and managerial training, but not like how do you coach people. And I think when we've got this, if you've got managers who are probably millennial, maybe even Gen X, possibly the more senior folk, you've got differences in views of how you go about work, never mind anything else.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be communicated down and misunderstood. In my day it was, there's your target, crack on, basically, right? And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we're paying you, you know why you're getting paid, you know what your job is. If you've got any questions, come ask me, otherwise crack on. Now that's not going to work for everybody. You need people, especially, younger generation, want to believe in what they're doing, want to know what they're part of, want to know where they sit in that organization and how they're contributing. And that's absolutely right. But it's just a different way of thinking.
100%.
But if you don't communicate that and work with that, and I've got a guest coming on in a couple of weeks who I think is an expert in people management, particularly with sales teams. I mean, the insights he shared with me is fascinating. He's going to be on the show soon. So yeah, I definitely think enablement is key for not just for salespeople, but I think leaders need it as well, because not every sales manager is a natural coach and might need some help on how to be better on that as well. I mean, those are just obvious things to try and optimize. But what about...
Before you jump on that,
Yeah.
I mean, they say, I'll probably butcher this phrase, but you are the sum of the people you keep around you. Mm-hmm. And if you keep good people and good coaches, and I've, over the years have worked with some amazing people, I still keep in contact with them. Some of them I've followed around for multiple jobs, but they're the people I want to keep coming back to. They're the ones I go back to and say, I've had enough of being employed. I'm going to go back out and start my own business up again. And I'm asking them, not permission, but it's like, what am I doing here? Is this the right thing to do? You know the market as well as I do. Am I missing something? Am I fit for that? What do you think I should be doing? What's going? I don't take decisions in isolation. I go in and speak to those peers around me that I've worked for and worked with and respect their opinion, and they help me. And that's why I'm here today doing what I'm doing, because of the advice and guidance and support for those around me. I haven't got any formalized coaching, but I do go to them with problems, and I'm like, instead of take on this, how do I do this? Or, what should I do here? Or, this isn't working. And they're very open and honest with me. And, hopefully that's going to keep elevating me. So even as a coach, going in, I still use peers and people around me to coach myself for what I'm doing with my business. Yeah. Sorry for interjecting that.
No, that's good. Absolutely valid point, and please do continue to do so. So, before we get a bit more into sort of pipeline challenges and the things that you see and the approaches that you've been using and the guidance that you've given, why don't you give a little bit of background to how you got to where you are now? You know, I've called you a go-to-market consultant. I know that's a bit generic because I know there's an awful lot that you do, and I've just tried to wrap it into one thing, which is probably doing you a disfavor. Tell me a little bit about your journey of where you come from, the sales roles that you've had, and how you found yourself in this role, in this sort of fractional go-to-market expert space.
Yeah, so I've had a very diverse career and done it in sort of a different way than probably most people would look at a CV. So started out working for a reseller back in the late 90s, shifting compact hardware, which was,
Good
back
old
in the days,
compact.
compact hardware. I remember going to Richmond and having the training there when they were
Yeah.
around. Ended up in distribution, loved distribution, but that was a real tough place to be, even back in the early 2000s. And from there, actually, I was a sales specialist and a sales manager and did loads of things. And I formed an affiliate with a company called Absence, where I went and took my first real sales role. So I never didn't go through this whole like being an SDR, BDR, moving to a commercial AE and then going to an enterprise AE. I kind of did my apprenticeship through resellers and distribution and built a network and in the end user computing space, and then ended
Right.
up as an enterprise seller at Absence and rose through the ranks, hit my target. It was never number one. There was always one or two guys in either UK or in America who always used to beat me to the top, but I'd hit my target every year. Got my reward, ended up being promoted to regional director, did that for about 18 months. And then went back into selling again because kind of went through that loophole of love being an RD, great title, but I'm not hitting my targets because I've got a team and I need to go back out myself. So I went out and worked for Eternity, which was bought by Riverbed, and had a couple of cracking years there. So it was my biggest ever deals there, which was amazing. And then, decided to go and do this just pre-COVID because I was living in Cornwall and couldn't keep traveling and young kids and stuff. So I did this for a few years. COVID hit. And everyone was like, "Oh, you don't actually have to travel now. You can work from home." Would you? And I got a few offers to go back into the IT world, and I was like, "Love to." And this is where I think things really clicked for me is that I went in and run a business development team. I did it Automation Anywhere, grew it from 3 to 16. We had inbound, outbound, BDRs from Northern Ireland, London, France, Germany, Italy, and down into Dubai, which was amazing. I had a great team and it taught me so much. I didn't do that BDR piece. I think that's one of the things, if I look back at my sales career, I was really poor at was my prospecting
Right.
because I didn't have that education, that graduation around, that prospecting
Yeah.
of every day doing that. And I do this in some of the training I do is I actually show my sales figures over a 4-year period. And it's almost hit target or over exceed it in a quarter, down. And it's like that. And feast and famine is what I did.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I've got amazing, I'm going to close all this business. And then I head up and go, 150% of the target last quarter. That was amazing. Oh shit. I forgot to do prospecting. And then I'd run cycles for 90 days, get everything up, and then go and close. And
Prospecting sprints. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
and it was that. So
yeah, it's a bit
I
stressful.
think very stressful, very stressful. And so when I got into becoming BD manager and BD the leaders, and then I did it at Allbound and run a global team out of Atlanta and London, it taught me so much about pipeline generation. And especially at Allbound, I didn't just manage the BDR. I was responsible for pipeline. We called it pipeline generation, health, and coverage. And I was looking at the generation across all of our channels, so looking at the health of it and looking at the coverage of it and the close rates and really getting to own it. And also got to own the partner channel as well, set that up and started running the partner channel there as well, which was really fun and exciting to do. And that sort of gave me a bit more of an understanding. And also I was doing a lot of enablement as well. I did a lot of enablement in my role at Qualification Anywhere. Used to love running enablement for all the BDRs, love running coaching, big into data, but data only tells you so much. You have to then go and be more creative around how you coach that, and you have to tailor your coaching plans. Across the team of 16 was really quite challenging to do, but I love doing it, understanding, is it they're not picking up the phone enough? Is they're not, they need some help with their calling? Do they need help finding people to put into their cadences? Why aren't their meetings, converting from a meeting set to a sales qualified opportunity? And then you can go and focus and coach them on those particular areas. And with the technology you've got around now, it's sort of very easy to go and listen to stuff, playback stuff to give you the insights to how to go and coach them. So and then left Allbound last year. As the last year was a terrible year. Businesses had to cut back, and I was part of a bit of a cull and redundancy, and took a few months out, enjoyed the summer, played a lot of golf, and thought, do you know what? I think it's time to go back out and do this again on myself, but actually do it this time. And whereas last time I was just doing fractional stuff and going in and just being a sales marketing or sort of person, helping people drive. We've actually done it differently this way, and we're doing a lot of enablement, a lot of coaching, a bit of fractional work, a lot of advisory around planning how we do the go-to-markets and what they should be doing, which I'm really enjoying.
That's brilliant. All right. Well, look, bags of experience. That's why I wanted you on the podcast. There's lots of, when we spoke, there's a number of topics I want to draw out today because it just really, you have some interesting perspectives on a few things. So what I'd like to do is just go back to the pipeline challenges. But what do you think are the biggest, you talked about people doing the same things over and over again and it's a sign of insanity. So what are people, what are companies doing which are just not helping them in terms of pipeline, so they're not innovating. So what are the key things that you see from an SDR, from an AE, maybe from install-based expansion issues, from partner side, because you've got experience in all this. What do you think are the red flags? Like if you're still doing these things, and I call it the predictable revenue model, right? The Aaron Ross, that's still lots of companies in SaaS are still doing very much that cookie cutter approach and throw people at the problem. What do you think the red flags are that people need to if you did a stop, start, continue on it, what would you be stopping? What should you be starting? Or maybe what should you continue? It's a bit of a big question, but
it is a massive question. So look, I think from a strategy perspective and go to market and look at all the channels, everyone needs to be re-evaluating what they're doing across all of those channels. What's working, what isn't working, what everyone else in the market's doing, what could they do differently? And, I'm not going to go away and give away all my trade secrets and stuff, but love having those conversations and building different go-to-market plans. But one thing, every company I've talked to over the last probably 6 months of doing this, and even when I saw companies when I was working in prior companies and speaking to peers everywhere, is pipeline generation was a problem. It was either they couldn't generate pipeline or they were generating it and a lot of it was falling out early stages. And what I see and what I think is the big problem is not spending enough time in qualification. Because that is, and qualification is, am I qualifying you in or am I qualifying you out? And it's all right to qualify someone out. We don't want the wrong people, the wrong opportunities in our sales cycles to inflate a pipeline number to make us look busy when in fact it's got no chance of closing because we're spending time, effort, resources, money on something that's never going to return back to us in terms of revenue and commission that we're doing it for. So qualification is really good to be thinking about is I'm not only qualifying you in, I'm trying to qualify you out as well. Because I want to just find the people where I can work with, where I can make money, where I can make money for my company. Ultimately, what you should be thinking is can I solve a pain? Can I be valuable to that person? If I can't be, then do you know what? I shouldn't be talking to them because I can't help them. And if I help them, then I'm going to hit my personal goals. But at the end of the day, and we talked about this, I think this morning or last time we spoke. It's not just qualification of have you got a problem. It goes deeper than that. And I think people rush to go to demo, rush to take them through a sales cycle. When
Totally agree.
I want you to sit there in your pain for a minute and see how big that pain is for you and see how I can help you. And if I can help you, we'll go through and we'll go to a demo, we'll put a proposal together, we'll do a POV, POC, whatever you want to call it. We'll go through a sales cycle. But I've got a little acronym that I used when I was a seller. And when I used to train my BDRs on trying to find as much of this as possible before we hand it over to the AEs. But I used to do this as a seller. And I did a bit of selling at Allbound as well to help them out, small company, all hats. And I kind of use this with me. It's called PyTop. So I'm looking at pain, impact, what have they tried, what's the outcome they're trying to get to, and what's the project and initiative inside that business where I can try and find money to go and fund what I'm doing. Right?
That's a nice one.
So pain, everyone's got pains. I've got pains. They're called 4 kids. I'm not going to do anything about them. I'm not going to get rid of them. So do you know what? It's a pain I'm going to have to live with. So I'm not going to go and do anything about it, right? I'm being facetious. But there are pains inside of businesses that they're just going to live with and they're not going to spend money on, they're not going to solve. So you've got to find the real pains. I'll tie this back to, if you're looking for pains, bit of force management. Never done the training, but listened to a lot of podcasts and consumed a lot of their information. One bit really jumped out to me, right? Shareholders are looking for four or five things. They're looking for how can they increase revenue? How can they contain costs? How can they become more efficient and effective? How can they reduce risks and simplify the decision making? And how can they be more sustainable? So if you can find a pain in one of those five areas in those business, you're on to a bit of a winner. So once you've found that pain, to test it, you've got to understand the impact. What is the impact of that pain? Is it you, Rick, just don't like it and it causes you to have a bad day, but no one else in the business really cares about it? Or is it actually it's something that's affecting the growth of the business, increasing their revenue? Is it meaning that costs are spiraling out of control? Is it meaning they're inefficient and not effective? Is it making their business quite risky? You're looking at along those sort of economic strategic priorities in the business and finding out how the impact falls into those. Then it's like, what? Oh, go on. Sorry, you can say, Rick.
Yeah, I was going to say. So look, I totally agree. Look, this is, you're a seasoned veteran salesperson, so you understand this. But how do we help our sales leaders educate and enable their reps? Because that's the thing. We know what you should be doing, but how do we help them? Because it's easy saying, well, you need to figure out what the impact is. And I say that to people and go, and they don't always have the wherewithal to go and figure out those questions themselves. So have you got any tricks or tips about, because I love the acronym, by the way, PyTop's really cool. I love that, particularly about the project, because I always talk about, is there a funded project? And, ask that question. Is this are you looking for options and you're thinking about ideas? Is this pre-funded project, or is this a case of, no, this is a project, it's been funded and you've been told to go and find some vendors to fulfill it? So I love that PyTop as an acronym. It's great. But is there anything you can share without giving away your secrets in terms of, how can we help, what tips for sales managers to help them enable or come up with? I mean, I love PyTop, and hopefully they can take that away and we'll make sure it's in the notes. But what else have you got, like little tips around that to help them just, coach better and help their reps around that topic? Because implication of pain discovery is, to me, the foundation of the whole sales cycle.
Yeah.
Right? When you can get away with not capturing metrics a little bit at the beginning, we're both MedPIC guys, so we're often talking those terms, but pain identification, implication is where I see a lot of people struggle. They don't, it's either they don't have the right questions to ask, which means that's an enablement problem because you haven't given them the questions. To expect a rep to figure that out themselves, I think it's a bit naive, right? Mm-hmm. And I also think they don't go deep enough. They go maybe one level, two levels down, rather than keep doing you've got 4 kids, do the, why daddy, why daddy, why daddy, do the so what, and really try to get to the root cause of something. I think they feel sometimes that they feel maybe they're interrogating or being a bit too demanding, but there's a way of doing that.
So the reason I laugh there is I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because when I was running BDR teams, I always used to say is, and I can say this because I've had 4 kids, but we knock it out of toddlers, that curiosity. They always want to know why, right? And what BDR should do and what salespeople should do is find their inner toddler, but don't be interrogatory or annoying with it. They need to have elegant conversation, but embrace that curiosity, asking those questions. Tell me more about that pain. Who's affected by that pain? What happens if you don't solve that? Who's impacted? What does that mean to the business? They're not product specific or industry specific questions. It's about building a repertoire of questions and just being curious. And we see it every day. If you watch Graham Norton or Jonathan Ross or some of the American talk shows, they do that, right? They ask questions, but they do it in a guise of an elegant conversation. They don't sit there as a police interrogation and just go, why did you do that? What's happened? What happened? Da, da, da. It feels quite militant and horrible. They haven't gone, wow, you really did that? Yeah. How did that work out? And then they'll carry on talking because it's a conversation. You're going backwards and forwards. And that's what BDRs and AEs need to find, is that eloquent conversation, or elegant conversation, because I nicked that off you this morning when we spoke, because that's a great way of placing it. But it's about having that conversation, but with curiosity behind it. So why is that important to you, Rick?
Yeah.
What happens if you don't solve that? Who's affected by that? What have you tried to solve that? How did that work for you? just basic questions in conversation. And I loved one that I was taught, and it's in Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and I've had training on it over this.
I was going to mention Chris Voss. He's got some great insights in this.
Yeah, I keep picking up the book, putting it down. I've listened to some of it. I haven't finished it, but the one thing I always take out is mirroring.
Yeah.
It's that 1 to 3 words either at the end or the pointed things in their sentences. Like, if you just say that, and I do it sometimes with the kids and the wife, just say stuff, and then they just jump in and carry on because they want to talk about it.
It's fascinating.
I did with the customer, they was like, they had their first $1 million quarter. I was like, $1 million? That's all I said. And then they jumped in and wanted to tell me more. They didn't even have to ask a question.
It's like wizardry, honestly. So if anybody's not, I'm sure everybody's read Never Split a Difference. If anybody hasn't, go and read it. I mean, it's one of the books behind me. I've done his training as well. Great training, by the way, with Black Swan. But it's very simple. And you just said it. Be really curious. I mean, that's just, we talk about when we hire people, we're looking for curiosity. I think it's one of the traits most sales managers are looking for. But that's really, it's like be that, I think that's a great analogy, be that show host where you show an interest in them. But that tip, it's a great tip, and it's super easy. Most discovery questions are fairly generic. And it shouldn't be an index card of questions. It should just be very natural, because then you're doing active listening. You should be really listening and paying attention. And when they say something, I think we generally, and I know I was guilty of this when I was a rep back in the day, is you just skip over it because you're thinking about the next question, or you got excited because they've shown some buyer intent and you're like trying to race ahead to go and do the other stuff, rather than like slow down to speed up. All right.
Yes.
So slow it down and say, look, do you know what? Can we just go back to that point you just made? Just help me understand this. I mean, just sort of twist and turn, be very gentle. And it's just about tone. It's about pace. And maybe we need to give enablement for that. Maybe we need to help train that. I don't know, right? I mean, no one comes to me and says, Rick, can you go and do a training course on how to ask questions and use tonality and the rest of it? Now, I'll bring all that stuff in. I get people saying, can you do a discovery course, qualification? Because for the reasons we've talked about, that's really poor, because they see a big, 3 areas I see a problem with, right? One is not enough pipeline, fine, not unusual. Second one is a lot of deal drop off, typically after demo or presentation, deal slippage, and later on in the sales cycle. And the other one is mid-funnel, where the deals stall. They just get ghosted, right?
Yes.
So for me, those particular pinch points, as I call them, is I deliver training on those pinch points for a lot of clients, because those seem to be quite common, because all of those affect forecast predictability. But I love the tips there. You're spot on, really good.
And if you can't do, in my mind, for me, if you can't complete high top, you haven't got a sales cycle. All you're doing is filling stuff into your pipeline to make you look busy, but you're becoming a busy fool because you're never going to close anything. So it's a false metric. Yeah,
you need to go and trademark that, because someone's going to steal that now. I think it's a great acronym. It's really good. So just going to say it here: PyTop, invented by Dan. Don't steal it. Well, no, you can steal it, but just give him the cred.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, so something we talked about before as well, and I want to talk a little bit about all bounding and what that means to you, and just get your take on that, and whether that's something we should be shifting to, or whether it's just a bit of word salad. All right. So is it a real thing, or near bounding, or bounding, whatever? So I'd love to get your perspective on that, because I am seeing some changes in the market around looking at go to network and co-selling and so on. Before we get into that, some of what I see is a lot of these teams, and this is one of the red flags I think now, is that a lot of companies are still doing the predictable revenue model. They're just running so fast. I don't think they've got the time, or they're struggling to stand back and go, well, how do we change this? What should we be doing? And I think that's where they need people like you to come in and help them with that, because I think people are just so damn busy. I think they need a third party who can come in, who's got no axe to grind, who's not involved in their politics or whatever, can look at what they're doing from a go-to-market motion, marketing, sales, and so on, and then go, right, here's the levers that we can address. Here's the quick wins, because there might be some quick wins there that you can just, impact straight away. All right. So you've got plenty of pipeline, but you've got a massive drop off because your qualification's poor, right? Or, it's wrong. That might not be a problem because you might be qualifying out. But there's another aspect to the qualifying out bit was one I could talk about, which is I also see people qualifying out too quickly because they're doing almost like a bant on them, right? Rather than actually they could be a really good opportunity. They're still correct ICP and the rest of it, but they need to be nurtured. So I talk about it being the 3% versus the 7%. And there's clients I've worked with where I just feel they've just given away opportunity and just literally qualified out. I'm like, why? It's one of the best logos ever. Tell me why. And the reasons weren't qualifying out because they weren't a good fit. It's because the person wasn't in buying mode, but they were curious. So, we call that the 3% of the market who's actively buying. Everybody's chasing that 3%. That's very crowded. And I think I wonder if, because I've seen it a few times, I'd just love to get your take on it. Do you think two things? One is, do you see anything like that as well? Because I wonder whether there's companies who, my red flag is you're ignoring that 7%. That's the first thing. Who do come to you inbound, but you're qualifying out too quickly for the wrong reasons, or you're not even marketing or going to market to try and attract that 7% who have the problem, know they have the problem, but are not actively looking, they're passive. If you got a take on that?
Huge topic, and yes, I have. So I've done some work with a client around this area, and what we found is that actually if we went back to their close no purchase, we went back and revisited some of their customers or prospects, and we found out they had actually gone on, we went back about 12 months, and the stuff that was probably 6 to 12 months old, a lot of them had gone and bought us an alternative solution. They went in with a, what are you doing? Yeah, well, just looking, don't know. And it was like, too early, bin it. And it's like, why? And then you find out that competitor X and competitor Y have made sure they kept nurturing that, moving it along, doing stuff with it. Probably had some marketing support, invited them to an event, maybe kept them in a pre-pipeline phase for a while and just nurtured them. And then when they're ready, they've moved that into an open opportunity and taken it through the sales funnel and said, right, now is the right time. And I've nurtured it through. And I think that's a really big thing. Because BANT, I like, it's easy, it's a nice acronym, everyone. But if you've got 30,000 vendors, let me start again. I've never worked anywhere where they've woken up and gone, we're going to buy your product this year, this day, this week, this month, right? You have to go and find the money, right? And unless you're selling hardware on a contract refresh and it's up in 3 years and they've got it physically in their budget, or you're trying to displace a competitor in an established market, if you're going into somewhere that hasn't got anything that resembles your type of technology, they're not going to have budget for it. So BANTs, quickly, you don't need the budget. Have they got the authority? Well, chances are they're not. But can they get you to someone with authority? Can they become a champion? So it doesn't have to be your economic buyer or a key stakeholder. Can it be a champion? So again, authority that. The one that really is imperative to me in BANT is the need, which goes back to PyTop. Is there pain, right? Have they got a need? Is there a pain? And I think that's what every qualification should be at the start. And if I can see that there's a pain, and that pain's big enough, then depending on how you are an organization, you find a way of recording that, holding that in your CRM, nurturing it, so that when the time is right, you are the one that's in pole position to secure them as a customer by helping them resolve their challenges. And then there you've got new revenue. But that qualifying out too early, I get that, right? There are some that people have just taken, your BDR booked a meeting with someone who wanted to waste some time. They just wanted to sort of find out what's going on in the market. Yeah, they're not the ones we're talking about there. But the ones who are generally, if you do your high top or your pain discovery, whatever you want to call it, and you actually feel there's something going on, that's one of my old sales directors used to say to me, is, can you smell money? If you invest time here, could you smell cash, right? If you actually put some time in and work with them, not just you, but embrace resources around the business, like, inviting them to events, doing conference calls or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Could you smell money coming from that? And it's kind of like, yeah. You know, it's not guaranteed, but actually they're in pain there. They don't realise it yet. No one's physically put dollars against it. But actually, if we work with them, build enough pain, get access to stakeholders, network around the account, and even if you struggle, what I think I love is like, just get your BDR to pick up the phone and phone the EB. And then when your champion has a bit of a moan at you, say, sorry, I told him not to call the account. He's just new. He's finding his way, and you can if you feel the pain's big enough, but you can't get anywhere, you can use tactics like that, and that's going a bit like 2 or 3 steps further across. But just generally quite passionate about all this stuff because people do qualify and leave money on the table for their competitors all the time.
No, and it's. I think it's going to become more and more important as we get more competitive in this market. And look, I've seen it countless times. I've been asked to do training around uncovering latent pain. I've been asked to do training around how to nurture those, let's call them pre-pipe deals. I don't know, for want of a better word. I think reps are really poor at doing that. I mean, you just described a whole bunch of plays you could be doing. I think the average Joe doesn't necessarily think about that or has even got the assets. I mean, the clients have been working with us like, let's get some videos together. We've got all the assets. Just pull a pack together that we can just, provide these people and go, right, so you're interested in doing this. By the way, here's some videos that might help you on that. Some self-serve stuff. But have them almost, build a sequence of reminders to reach out to these people and nurture them. I mean, I don't mean nurture, just drop them into a marketing sequence and they get blasted a bunch of stuff, right? That's not what I mean. I mean, literally start to go into serve mode rather than sell mode. How can I serve this person? Because the advantage you've got, I mean, the strange thing was when I was selling, that seemed to be all we ever did. It was always those early stage because we focused on, have they got a pain? Have we got power? And have we got fit? That's what I always got taught, pain, power, fit. Have they got a pain? If they got pain, great. Have we got power? No, but have we got access to power, or champion, right? Yep, possibly. Maybe more work to be done on that. And have we got a fit? Can our product actually address this? Is it a good fit? If the answer is like 2 out of 3 at that point, that's a goer. Why? Yeah. Because your manager, as my manager would do, would coach me to go and figure out and map the stakeholders and go and find where the power is. It's called selling. It's called do a bit of graft, right? But if there's no pain, disengage. So, you might have a bunch of those, but I think we've been in this world, particularly in the SaaS world, tech world, where everything's been geared towards selling to the people who are in buy mode. I know there's intense software out there now and a whole bunch of other stuff, and that's becoming a lot more topical. But I think we need to enable our people to recognize when there's a latent opportunity, which means that maybe they don't even realize they've got a pain, the problem, but help uncover that. That's one thing. That's your next 30%. But the 7%, don't throw away an opportunity because you're too quick to go, no, they're not ready to buy, move on. If you are absolutely in a luxury position where you've got more inbound coming out your ears, good for you. But I'm not seeing many people seeing that. Inbound's dropped off a cliff for most companies. So we need to do more around developing and nurturing, educating, serving that 7% to convert them into a 3%er. And guess what? If you do that, and I'm sure you'll agree on this, if you get in that early, here's the real bonus. You now get to define the decision criteria. Right? Because they know you, they trust you, they see you as an expert. If they still need to go to an RFP, if they still need to do some sort of evaluation process, you are in a much stronger position to define what the criteria should be. They might have said, I need these things, A, B, and C. And you can say, yes, we can do that. But by the way, our customers also see value in 5, 6, and 7. And I really think you need to think about that. All right? So I love, and I'm a big advocate, and I think I'm going to be talking about it more and more in the markets that we're in, which is highly competitive, is what are we doing to enable and train to go after the 7%? What is marketing doing to help us in that piece as well? right?
Yeah.
And let's not qualify out too early. Qualifying out is great if it's not an ICP and a bad fit. But if there's pain there, great. But the problem is most of the reps are not great at identifying pain. It still seems to be the biggest problem. So I think that's,
100%.
net of this conversation so far, probably help your reps qualify better, harder around pain would probably have a bigger impact on your pipeline than anything else.
Yeah, and one thing I don't know if it's a common thing, but I got taught years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, was on the enterprise sales model. But actually, as soon as something becomes a project, you're actually chasing the tail and you're competing against the market, and you're probably going to be column fodder because they've already chosen the solution they want and the outcome they want. And if the organization that's got in first is any good, they've defined it so it's actually slanted and leaning towards what they do and no one else can do it. So actually, if you can come in and catch them early and get them to a point where they want to go to market and procure something or go invest time and money to potentially buy something, and you're the lead solution doing it, you're in pole position. So that's where you actually ultimately need to be. Is not you're catching people in buy mode. You need them to almost be in with feeling of pain in discovery mode. And if you've got to take them there, brilliant, do it. But if they're already there and you find them there, make sure you're the trusted advisor that's going to take them to the point where they realise they're going to do something about it.
Yeah, and using your pie top, if they haven't got the project, but all the other things fit, that probably means you're in an earlier stage.
Exactly. But you would use that project piece. Is there any initiatives going on that you can tap into to find the flow of money?
Right.
And there's always money flowing, especially depending on where you sell. But I mean, at AppSense, we got away in the way of all the Windows 7 transformation budgets, which were in some of the big banks was tens and tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And we wanted $1 million out of it. So we were just like a rounding error on a purchase order because we should have taken a small fraction of it. And we were then, but we've shown so much value that they wanted to include us. So we found the flow of money. We found a pain, which I won't go in and bore you because it's old tech now, but we found a pain, we found a problem, we found out how the impact was, and we went through it all. And then we found where the flow of money was, we interrupted it, and we became part of an existing project.
Classic selling. Excellent. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about something that you're quite passionate about and is really intriguing because I've not heard anybody talk about this aspect. So a couple of things is the balance between having a metrics-driven thinking and a sales approach and balancing that with, you've used the word creativity. I talk about experimentation, but talk to me a little bit about this and your perspective on this, because this is interesting. And I've not heard many people talk about this. So love to share with the viewers a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I love data, right? So I'll come out and say that first and foremost is, I think data is really great, but data needs to be balanced with creativity. And let me explain that a little bit further. So if you look at every organization we're going in now, that I've worked in, talked to, got friends and peers into, they're driven on data. What's our close rate? How much pipeline? What's our, what has it moving through the funnel? Which is great, we understand that, but we're being driven by data at the expense of creativity. It's that logical side of the brain, the left-hand side of the brain, that is dictating and driving businesses forward. And I'm nicking this phrase off of Rory Sutherland, but we're so focused on micro efficiencies that we're producing macro inefficiencies. And that's generally across the general human race right now and what we're trying to do. And it's perpetuating itself into all types of businesses, and we're being driven down this side. And what I'm saying is we don't do away with that. We definitely need that. But actually, we need to embrace the right-hand side of the brain. We need to be creative. We need to do things differently. We need to put the old playbooks down. We need to go and try stuff. Now, I'm not saying do a full 180 pivot and forget everything we're doing and chance our arm and throw it all on black and see what happens. What I'm saying is what's working at the moment isn't quite working. It's still providing growth. It's still doing stuff. We're still killing business. But let's take 10% of the focused effort budget away and let's look at doing something else. Because we can then cover that risk across the other 90% of the business if it doesn't work. If it does work, guess what? We take what we've done with the 10% and then we retrospectively bring it back and bring it across the whole business, and everyone gets the benefit from it. But at the moment, no one's taking that chance and being creativity and trying to do something different. It's doing that whole thing. And I just think, science, and I talk about this with when I do MedPick training, selling is science and art. MedPick and everything we talk about we touched about this earlier about questioning and everything. That's the art side of it. The science side is What's your metric, economic buyer, decision criteria, which is fine. You need to have that logical. You need to be able to report. You need to understand it. You need to, have a framework and a sales process. That's the science part of it. But it has to be complemented with the art side of it. Yeah, how do I ask those questions? How do I get creative? How do I use my personality? How do I think, I'm going to run an event. I've got 7 people that are in around London that are all in the same place. I'm just going to do a dinner. And can I have £1,000 to take 7 people out for dinner and a few drinks, and I want to get them together and have a conversation with them? Oh, actually, by the way, I want to bring a customer into that. Or how do I, bring people into a round table? Can I do a webinar on this? Can I, in a deal, I know we don't normally do it this way, but could I do X, Y, and Z? Just being a bit creative and not trying to break the rules. But I mean, we did it at several companies when I was growing up in the 90s, thousands, and even to the 2010s. We didn't exactly play by the rules. I'm not saying we were just doing anything in the Wild West, but we were creative and we tried to push the boundary. And sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes it did work and actually became the new normal, and it was then adopted across the whole business. We were doing stuff because we were trying to push the boundaries, not just following a script going, what's your metrics? Who's the economic buyer? Because that's not going to work, right? You've got to try and stand out. And for me, the creativity thing is, I think, something we've missed massively, and of leaning on that logical side of the brain and become too science data driven.
I mean, look, I get that. I mean, to me, it sort of fits in the logical, emotional selling and buying. When we buy, we often buy emotionally and back it up with logic. And I think we need to play to both sides of that as well. And, I definitely know clients, not clients of mine, but, customers who have shared, clients of mine as well, but people who've shared that bad experiences, bad buying experiences, where they've just had probably a junior rep, but not always, just interrogating them, just literally going through the MEDDIC acronym, right? So what's your metrics? And the guy's like, what do you mean my metrics? What's your metrics? Okay, so who's your economic buyer? I mean, literally asking those questions.
Yeah.
And even if it's not as bad as that, but you're still following a very scripted way, it's just a bad experience for the buyer. And I think there's a lot of that going on. I mean, I think buyers are tired of working with salespeople. I can't remember who did the survey. I can't remember who it was, but one of the bigger management consultancies did the survey where I'm pretty sure it was about, would you prefer to buy online? And it was ridiculous, on the whole, even for large purchases. And if someone knows the survey that was done, please chip in. But it was really, really high. Most people would prefer not to work with a salesperson, even for high-ticket type sales. Now, I think sometimes that can then give you a bad experience because you can then have buyer's blues. So I think you do need a salesperson, but it's almost, you need a blend. And the way you do the blend is you be of service to people by giving them education and help so they can understand how to make that decision, and then they still go to you for the more detailed stuff that they're going to need, because they will need a salesperson for a high ticket type product. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah. They've got better to have that trust and see that you're in it with them, and that they can actually, I mean, we call people salespeople, but also, in a market that you're trying to create, where most people are because they haven't got the budget already defined, so you have to go and be consultative. You have to help them. You have to educate them. You have to give them value. You have to also be willing to walk away and say, actually, with greatest respect, we're not the right solution fit for you. Yeah. Because they will respect you for that, instead of you trying to ram a square, round peg into a square hole. It just isn't going to work. So, but I think, that goes back to the whole, I've been told I've got to hit a target. This is the methodology or the framework or the sales process that I'm going to do. I need to ask them questions. I've got to show a demo. If it's product led, I want to give them, get them in to do a free trial for 6, 10, 12, 20 days, whatever it is, and then I want them to buy. It's like, well, hang on, where's the human connection? Where's a bit of creativity? And going back to, what's your metrics? Well, or economic buyer. The question isn't who's your economic buyer. The question is, who in your organization cares about this? Who's the one that's ultimately going to be the one that, is going to mean the most to him? Who's the one who's going to be able to fund this project for you so you can sort these pains out for you? That's how you just ask the question in a creative kind of way. And I always My my line I used to always love when sales. I used to work in sales techies, and they always say, "How much does this cost?" And I would say, "So expensive." But that's why you've got a procurement department with a big stick who's going to beat the crap out of me at the end of this to get the best price. And they always laugh, and it takes it off the table. And I said, "Look, I can tell you the list price, but you won't pay that." And procurement will enjoy their time with me at the end, and they will laugh. And I was like, that's all you do, right? And that's not anything amazing. I didn't take a brain surgeon to come up with it. But I don't think there's that personality in the salespeople that
Well, that's a
help
bit
us
of
endear
it's
to the
that.
buyer.
Yeah, it's that sales banter, isn't it? As well, it's people sometimes can be a bit defensive, and they've got these objections in your head. Chris Voss talks about it. Just get them out. Just say you probably think this is really expensive, and it will be, and everyone just laughs because it's like, okay, but there's a reason why it's going to be expensive, and we'll dig into that or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah,
I know the rules say don't say something's expensive, right? That's what the rule. That's what the sales rules say. But I think
yeah.
you can be a cheeky chappy, as I call it, and say things with a bit of smile and a bit of charm, and you can get away with pretty much anything. But disarming people in a positive way, in terms of helping them relax and just take some of these things that they're worrying about, and it's that's the I don't know whether you can teach that though. I mean, is that or that personality, and that's why the good salespeople are very good at doing that. And I've met some
Yeah.
great people who've got just the wonderful personalities that they can just literally charm
But
by it.
But I go back to what we said earlier is, right, I wasn't always like that probably, but I was curious how other people were doing and I made sure I learned it. So
Right.
curiosity goes back to the heart of everything. It's not just curiosity and asking questions, it's curiosity about how the best people around you are doing. It's curious how things work, how I'm always thinking how things work, want to understand more, want to learn, want to push myself and become a better person. And then at
Yeah.
45, I'm very different than when I was 17 and got into this game as a really shy teenager who had no idea what a PC was. So yeah, some of it,
But
they haven't got it, but they can learn it.
so I agree with that. I've always been curious, lifetime learner. That's my personality. I don't think, and maybe this is going to be controversial, I don't think, and it's a generalization, but I think it's pretty accurate from what I've observed, the majority of the younger generation, the Gen Z, are not naturally curious self-learners. They want to learn, but they want you to teach them. They want you to do a course. They want you to coach them, as opposed to, back in the day, I remember buying cassettes. People may not know what those are, but cassettes, the old C90s, and I'd buy a course, Zig Ziglar, on how to sell, and I'd be driving to my next appointment as a rep to go. Remember those days when we actually saw people face to face? I'd drive to them and I'd be listening on how to sell. And I remember I got given this course by my first sales manager, Gary Woodcock, by the way, great guy if he's listening. My first sales manager, like, yeah, go, you need to listen, because I didn't know how to sell. I'd come from pre-sales. I had no idea. I honestly I don't even know, I can't believe now he even took me on, frankly. But he took me under his wing and he was a fantastic sales manager. And I remember listening to Zig Ziglar on how to sell. And I would buy everything, I'd read every book, I'd listen to every tape I could find and CDs and you name it, right? Because I wanted to learn how to be a better salesperson, because I saw it as a profession. And I don't think I think the majority of people who come into sales don't think like that. They want you to teach them, they want to be coached, but very few of them seem to have the same drive that most of us had about bettering ourselves. I think the traits you're talking about are really common, at least everybody I know in sales. That was a real common thing to do, was to go. You didn't expect the company to teach you. You went and learned the trade by talking to other reps, and they took you under the wing and put your arm around you and gave you a few tips here and there, and you shadowed people, but you did a lot of self-learning. Am I wrong? Do you think, is this
No.
my observation, or do you think that's a fair comment?
So, I mean, to go a step further, I've observed my kids, right? So, whilst coaching and enablement, something I do for profession, I used to also like do it for my kids. I run kids football teams. I love that coaching and training and evolving them as well. And I also do it with my kids. And I caught sight of a book many years ago. It's called, I did have it around here somewhere. I can't remember where it is. It's ripped, fallen out. It's called You Are Awesome by Matthew Said.
All right.
Matthew Said, British journalist, ex-ping pong player, but written a few books, really good. But I got all my kids to read this. This is all about fixed mindset and growth mindset. So I found with kids, a lot of kids can be fixed mindset. I can't do this. It's all can't instead of how can I do this or what can I do and how can I be. And especially my youngest sons, I've got two boys, two girls, and my youngest son was very fixed minded. I can't do this. He's now just about to do his GCSEs. Massive change. It's taken a long time with him, but it's like, I think generally, I don't know whether it's a generational thing. I don't know if I was like that. I can't remember that far back of being a kid. But I think I was generally quite growth mindset. Maybe that's because we weren't stuck in front of PCs and had the internet. You were out. You were always exploring and doing stuff. I don't know whether that's a reason why. But I find a lot more kids these days are always stuck in this fixed mindset that when they get out, that this is how it's going to be done. This is how it's going to be done. They've got to be helped. It's got to be a training course for them. They haven't got that growth mindset of walking into business and going, I'm going to be earning 300k in 5-10 years time. How the hell am I going to do it? Right, I need to find out how he does it. What does he do? How do I do this? What's the next career path? How much do I have to sell? Why do I sell? Where can I learn? What personal development can I do? Who can I attach myself to? Do I need a coach? They're not walking out and saying that. They're like, well, I'll come to business. You should be training me. It's like, well, if you come and work in sales and expect to be trained, going back full circle to the start of this conversation, you're out of luck because it doesn't actually work that way because there's not enough enablement and coaching goes on in this industry right now. So I agree with you. I just think, the generational thing and still get my head around, can't get around Gen X and millennial and all this and boomers and stuff, just the people coming into the workplace now, the younger generation, I think are just a bit more fixed mindset and expect it to be done in a certain way. They don't come into this with a mindset, an exploratory growth mindset that perhaps you and I and others alike were forged as a kid and came into the industry with.
I think as leaders, we've got to recognize that and just accept it and do something about it, right? So, we can't say, well, this is how we used to do it, because we just sound like a bunch of grumpy old men, right? So we've got to, because everybody's got talents, and Gen Z are absolutely digital experts. We've got to help them tap into what they're great at and use their superpowers. But if they are not naturally inclined to do self-learning, then we've got to recognize that and give them some enablement, because then we'll get a better version of them. So I do hear whinging, for want of a better word, in sales leaders going, oh, they don't do this, they don't do that. It's like, no, you've got the right mindset. How are we going to help them do? We've got to tap into that superpower. And if they need coaching, give them coaching. If you haven't got the bandwidth to do it yourself, bring in a third party to go and do it. All right. Bring in someone to do some training, invest in them. They will give you twice it back, because that's what they care about. That's what they value as young people. They value that training, they value that investment. And I think you'll get more from those type of individuals and more from the team if you recognize that as a leader.
We evolve as humans, right? And we change the way we enter the workplace. So the way that people are managed and supported and developed has to change along the way, right? Just because it was like that, again, don't want to sound like the grumpy old men, but just because it was like that in our day, there was no enablement. You came in, you got a phone. I had an semantic act database, which was like a really old,
I had that.
Yeah. I mean, you look where we are now with the CRMs, amazing, but there was no mailing, there was no auto tracking, it was all manually updated, it was part of crap with loads of data in it. But just because that's how we did doesn't mean great things have evolved. We've got to adapt to the people coming into the marketplace and also the industry. And you know what, if they need that enablement and coaching, let's invest in them, because if we do it and they succeed, amazing. But if we don't invest in them and they stick around and they don't succeed, that's more painful. So why don't we just invest in them and give them the best opportunities to be successful, so we can support our customers, we can serve our customers, and we can build a great business.
Yeah, all right. I totally agree. Right, on that topic, we'll put sales to bed for now. I think we need to get you back. We need to get you back on here, because I think there's loads of things that I know we can talk about that we haven't covered. I'd like to finish on a little bit of a personal thing. So those people who are outside of the UK won't know what this is probably, but Tell the viewers a little bit about the Royal Lifeboat Institution. That is that's the right words for it. I know the acronym is RNLI, but I always think, is that what it stands for? Because you were an active volunteer for this, because you're based in Cornwall.
Yes.
Which is a lovely part of the UK. you live in a beautiful area. But tell people a little bit about being a volunteer on the lifeboats and what that is. Because most people, I mean, the US has the Coast Guard, and the UK is a little bit different to how we do it. We've got this, effectively, it's a not-for-profit organisation, right?
Yeah, not profit.
That's going out there saving lives. And you've been part of that. So I know you stopped doing it now because you've got a busy life, 4 kids, and school governor, and running a business. But tell me a little bit about that, because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's close. It's the RNLI, which is the Royal National Lifeboat Institute, and you're right. It's a charity. It's a not-for-profit organisation, funded by the general public. No government grants or anything, and it's a pretty amazing charity. About 300 stations across the UK and Ireland, located all on the shore, with a couple of inland for some of the big lakes, especially in Ireland and Scotland, where they have boats inland as well for those. And I've been in Cornwall for 12 years. Moved to Foy about 4 years ago, and immediately immersed myself in the community, met some people, didn't really know anyone here, and the RNLI was very much a hub of the community, and someone said to me, why don't you come and join? I was like, what is it? And they told me. I was like, yeah, sounds brilliant, let's give it a go. Never really been on a boat before, apart from crossing from Dover to Calais back in the days as a kid on school trips, but never really been on water, and thought, do you know what, I challenged myself, and I can actually help and hopefully save lives and help those that may need the service. And I did it, and it was pushed myself massively out of the comfort zone, proper growth mindset, like what can I go and achieve here? And didn't know one end of the boat from the other, didn't know my starboard from a port, my bow from a stern, certainly couldn't tie a rope, could barely tie my shoelaces. So yeah, learnt everything. There was 2 boats. We had an ILB, which is the small little rib. Started training on that, did a few shouts, realised as an old man that hurts. So I've left that to the younger kids, so they can go get bounced around in the surf and the swell with that. And then we got an ALB, which is a Trent class, which is nearly 30 years old, a lovely boat, which I was on for most of my tenure, and yeah, loved driving that thing, being on it, being a crew. I only got as far as a crew. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't have the time to be a navigator or a mechanic or anything like that. But 3.5 years I served. Wish I could have stayed longer, but just didn't have the time to offer for it. And yeah, as you say, it's 4 kids, running a business, governor, and trying to actually have a life and play golf and other stuff that really didn't fit at the time.
I think you're being very modest, and all the folk who do that, I am grateful for. I've sailed a little bit in my later years. I got into a little bit of sailing and had some interesting times. Things can get very dangerous very quickly. I remember we lost power. We had no wind, we had lost power, the engine wasn't having it, and we had a very large cargo vessel heading our way, which we actually hit, but luckily didn't take us out. So I've seen how dangerous things can be without no fault of your own, right? Just the nature of the beast. But I don't think people realise you're all volunteers, you've got normal jobs, and then you get a call out, which is literally Coast Guard will know someone's in distress, and you will literally drop whatever you're doing. It's like being in the fire service, I guess, is the nearest thing of people can probably visualize. Yeah. You're running to the lifeboat, you're putting your gear on, and you go out there, and you're saving lives. And I didn't realize you didn't have any background in sailing or fishing or anything. That's so impressive, because it's super scary. If you're in rough weather, I've not been out a lot in rough weather. I've been out a couple of times in storms. I have literally, hanging on, thinking, when's this going to be over, right? And you're the guys not running away from it; you're going into it. So,
yeah,
hat tip to you, sir, and all the other volunteers around the UK and Ireland, because I think it's super impressive. And I know you don't do it now, but you did 3.5 years, great service. And I just wanted to mention that because I like to finish on a bit of a personal thing, and I think it's super impressive. So well done, Dan.
Thank you. And I did love it. And the scarier the situation, the more fun I found it. There's plenty of times we've been going over waves in either boat, you've been airborne, smacked your head on something, come back down, and you've gone again. And then you've been told, get out on the deck, you've got to go and prepare something ready because we're going into a scene, and you're getting thrown, you're having to hang on because you're getting thrown up and down. And there's nothing like it. The thrill, the adventure is just amazing. Find yourself on such a big high, and I loved every minute of it. Wish I had more time. Wish I got here many years ago and spent some of my younger years on it, but it'll always be great, and enjoyed it. And we're all volunteers, no one gets paid for it. It's massive shout out to every member, past, present, and future for the RNLI. You do a fantastic job.
Yeah, massive service. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Dan. Absolutely fascinating. We need to get you back on here again because I know there's lots of things we didn't talk about. Massive insight, incredibly knowledgeable. If anybody needs any support, coaching, go to market, get in contact with Dan. Details will be in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time today, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Rick, thanks ever so much for having me on. Really enjoyed it. And I'm off to go and trademark PyTop.
Yeah, I think you should. I think it's one of the best new ones I've heard in a long time. So go and do that. I think there's a book there.
There probably is. The trouble is I can't read or write, so I need your help. You can write it for me.
I'll be a ghostwriter. Brilliant. Okay. Good stuff. Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it. You take care now. See you soon. Take care.
Cheers, Rick. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Subscribe now to the Behind the Pipeline podcast.